The barn smelled of hay gone sour and old iron. Moonlight slipped through the broken slats in thin, pale knives, cutting across the dirt floor where two figures knelt. Rope burned into small wrists. The girl's breathing came in sharp, panicked bursts, each one threatening to turn into a scream. She pressed her lips together, tasting blood, afraid that any sound might seal their fate. The rancher stood a few steps away, silent as the rifles mounted along the wall. His coat hung heavy on his shoulders, stiff with dust and dried sweat, the kind of weight that came from years of work and harder choices. He did not rush. He never rushed. Fear ripened best when given time. The boy shifted forward, placing himself just slightly ahead of his sister, as if his body alone could shield her. He was small for his age, ribs faintly visible beneath his torn shirt, but there was nothing small in the way he held himself. His hands trembled. He could not stop that, but his spine stayed straight. "Please," the girl whispered, her voice barely there. The boy shook his head once, a quiet command meant only for her. Then he raised his eyes to the rancher. The lantern light caught them, wide and dark, reflecting both terror and something steadier beneath it. "Spare my sister," he said. His throat tightened, and for a moment it seemed the words would die there. He forced them out anyway. "Take me instead." The sentence fell into the barn and did not echo. It did not need to. It sat there, heavy and undeniable. The rancher's gaze sharpened. He had heard every kind of begging. Promises of gold, prayers shouted to indifferent skies, curses hurled in defiance. This was none of those. This was an offering made without illusion. A child weighing his life and finding it lighter than his sister's. The girl let out a strangled sound and leaned toward him, but the rope held her back. "No," she whispered, shaking her head violently. Don't say that." The boy did not look at her. If he did, he might falter. He kept his eyes on the rancher, waiting, heart pounding so loud he was sure it could be heard. For the first time since they'd been dragged inside, the rancher did not look bored. Something old stirred behind his eyes as he studied the boy, measuring not his size, but his courage, and the barn grew unbearably quiet, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The rancher did not answer right away. He straightened slowly, joints popping beneath his coat, and turned his back to them. The lantern swung from its hook, throwing their shadows long and distorted across the barn wall. Two small, bound figures stretched thin, and one massive shape standing between them and the door. The silence that followed felt deliberate, sharpened by intention, like a blade held just above the skin. The girl's breath hitched. Each second without a response convinced her that the boy's words had doomed them both. She leaned forward again, straining against the rope until it cut deeper into her wrists. "Sir, please," she murmured, tears slipping down her face and vanishing into the dirt. The rancher remained still. He reached for the lantern and turned it slightly, letting the light fall fully on the boy's face. Dirt smudged his cheek. A bruise darkened his jaw. He looked too young to be here, too young to be choosing death with such calm. "You think you know what you're offering?" the rancher finally asked. His voice was low, almost conversational, yet it carried through the barn like thunder across open land. The boy swallowed hard. His mouth was dry, his tongue heavy, but he nodded once. "Yes, sir." The rancher stepped closer. Each bootfall pressed into the dirt with finality. He stopped just in front of the boy and crouched down until they were eye to eye. Up close, the rancher smelled of leather and smoke, of sweat earned under merciless sun. "You've got no idea how long a life can be," the rancher said. "Or how hard." The boy's hands curled into fists. "I know how hard hers has been." The words landed clean, honest. The rancher studied him more closely now, not searching for fear, but for the point where courage frayed. He found none, only trembling resolve. "Men twice your size beg me," the rancher said quietly. "They promise work, loyalty, blood. They break just as fast." "I'm not begging," the boy replied. His voice shook, but it did not retreat. "I'm choosing." The rancher's eyes flicked, just briefly, to the girl behind him. She was crying openly now, shoulders shaking, her gaze locked on her brother as if memorizing him. For a long moment, the rancher said nothing. The lantern hissed softly. Somewhere outside, a horse snorted, impatient with the night. When the rancher finally rose to his full height, his expression was unreadable, hard as weathered stone. The boy held his breath. The silence returned, heavier than before, and in it hung a question neither child dared to ask. Whether courage would be enough, or whether it would cost him everything. The rancher stood silently for a long beat, the shadows of the barn stretching and folding around him like dark fingers. Then, without a word, he reached for his knife. The dull glint caught the lantern light as he sliced through the rope binding the girl's wrists. The rope fell to the dirt with a soft thud, coiling at her feet. She gasped sharply, rubbing the tender marks, skin raw and angry against her fingers. Freedom felt strange, almost foreign, like stepping into a world she had only glimpsed in fleeting daydreams before harsh reality crushed it. The girl stumbled backward, tears blurring the lamplight. Her eyes flicked to her brother. Relief mingled with fear. "Go," the rancher said, his voice firm, carrying the weight of authority that brooked no argument. "But," she started, voice quivering, hope and fear tangled. "No," the rancher cut in, stepping closer, eyes fixed on the boy now. Now. The girl hesitated, heart hammering like a drum in her chest, but the courage she had seen in her brother moments ago surged inside her. She bolted toward the barn door, flinging herself into the night. The cold wind slapped her face, and moonlight streaked across her path. She ran without looking back, her sobs dissolving into the darkness. The boy stayed behind, his small hands clutched at the hem of his torn shirt, knuckles white. He had expected screams, threats, even a rush of pain. But the rancher simply watched him. The air seemed to thicken, heavy with tension, as if the barn itself waited for a signal. "Why?" the boy whispered, voice barely audible. The rancher's gaze softened slightly. "Because you made a choice. And because some courage, even in a child, deserves more than punishment." The boy's chest rose and fell rapidly. He could feel the weight of every heartbeat, the gravity of what he had just done, and the fear that it might not be enough. He stood frozen, anchored to the dirt floor by anticipation. Finally, the rancher spoke again. "You've got to learn something before you go on, kid. Life isn't just about protecting others, it's about knowing who you are when no one else is around." The boy blinked, confused but listening. The words sank slowly into his consciousness, heavy and undeniable. This was not just survival. This was a lesson, delivered in a silence louder than any shout. For the first time, he realized that the world beyond the barn was wider than his fear, and that sometimes, standing your ground could be more powerful than fleeing. And though he trembled still, it was no longer a tremble of defeat. It was the first shake of awakening courage. The rancher stepped back, his expression unreadable, giving the boy the unspoken permission to face what came next. And the boy, small yet unbroken, took a tentative breath, ready to step into whatever path awaited him. The rancher turned slowly, boots crunching in the loose dirt of the barn floor, and gestured toward the wide doors. Moonlight streamed in, silver and cold, illuminating the barn's rough timber and scattered hay. The boy froze, expecting punishment, chains, or a harsh command, but none came. Instead, there was only the vast openness beyond the barn, silent and waiting. "You don't belong on your knees," the rancher said, voice low but steady, echoing slightly against the wooden walls. "Not now, not ever. You belong standing." The boy blinked, confusion and disbelief mingling in his chest. I don't understand. "You're letting me live." The rancher's gaze softened, the hard lines of his face easing just enough to reveal something human beneath the weathered exterior. "I lost a brother once," he said, eyes dark with memory. "He never had the chance you just gave yours. I won't waste it on someone who's willing to risk everything for another." The boy swallowed, words failing him. The weight of the moment pressed on his small shoulders like an unseen hand. For the first time, the barn felt less like a cage and more like a threshold. The rancher crouched slightly, meeting the boy's eyes again. "You've shown me more courage than most grown men I've known. Don't squander it. Take that courage with you, and grow into the kind of man who can protect the ones who can't protect themselves." He tossed the boy a canteen, worn but full, its metal clanging softly as it landed at his feet. "Drink, move, live." The boy knelt only briefly to pick it up. Every instinct screamed to stay, to look back at the girl, to ensure she was truly safe. But he felt the rancher's unwavering gaze and knew this was not a command he could argue with. Slowly, carefully, he rose. The barn doors were open wide, letting in a chill wind that ruffled his hair and tugged at his clothes. Beyond, the path stretched into darkness, lined with shadowed trees and the faint glimmer of starlight. For the first time in hours, or maybe his entire life, he felt something like freedom. The rancher's voice followed him, carrying across the moonlit field. If you grow into the kind of man you tried to be tonight, don't waste it. The world will test you, but don't let it break you. The boy took a step forward, then another. Each one was a small defiance of fear, a testament to courage chosen rather than forced. Behind him, the rancher returned to the barn, shadow among shadows, silently watching, knowing that the boy would carry the lesson of mercy, bravery, and selflessness long after the lanterns went out. And in that moment, under the cold light of the moon, both the rancher and the boy understood something timeless. Courage could be quieter than a scream, stronger than steel, and more powerful than any threat the world could muster. The boy disappeared into the night, trembling, not from fear, but from the enormity of the choice that had changed them both forever. If you want, I can combine all 4 expanded acts into a full cohesive approximately 1,500-word story that reads like a polished short story ready to publish. It would fully capture the tension, emotion, and drama. Do you want me to do that?